Another great week. Getting ready for another SPS Monday motivation. Yes, sir, indeed. We are getting through the month of August. Gee whiz, I'm looking at the calendar. August 10th. Well, whether good times or bad times, they don't last long, right? They keep moving. And we keep moving. Gonna get started in a second. Feeling really good today. Today's message is about got self-doubt. Remember the popular milk commercials, got milk? It became a brand for everybody to see that. Do you have self-doubt? And I think this reality is that none of us are free from self-doubt. I'm going to talk about some research that was done that supports that theory, but gives a pretty good perspective of how we can look at self-doubt and how we can use it to be successful in our lives going forward. So with that, good morning everybody. What's up, Book? So talking about self-doubt. Self-doubt is something that we all can potentially battle with, but I think it's important. Good morning, brother. But I think it's important that we can have the right perspective. Self-doubt lingers in our mind and our head all around us. We deal with it so many times, whether it's on a daily basis, if not on an hourly basis. And one thing we can do about self-doubt, folks, one thing we can do to overcome self-doubt is to reframe it when that doubt comes in. Reframe self-doubt, meaning, don't look at it as, oh, I'm doubting myself. Look at it as, this is part of the process of me moving forward. When I decide to do something new, when I decide to push myself, when I decide to set different expectations, self-doubt naturally comes in. And instead of me saying, woe is me, I got this self-doubt, I should stop, something is wrong, say, oh, this is part of the process, this is part of the protocol. I had many reasons to doubt having a goal of finishing my book, The SPS,Edge, A Guide to Mental Toughness in Sports and Life Post-COVID-19, finish it on my birthday. And I thank my viewers, the Michelle Watkins of the world, for supporting me, and other people as well. But the reality is that we have to reframe how we look at it, folks. I talk about that a lot. I talk about that when you reframe how you look at pressure. Your purpose is on the other side of the pressure. So we have to reframe how we look at it. Don't look at self-doubt being horrible just because it came up, but look at where am I at and why is this part of the process. Good morning, Brother Sharp. Rick Wiener in the building. Good morning, Rick. Talking about self-doubt. The next thing we can talk about is we have to distinguish between realistic self-doubt and unrealistic self-doubt. Now we get into some principles in the book that I talk about self-evaluation. This is when you have to be honest with yourself. Are you realistic for feeling self-doubt about a particular thing you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to make a grilled cheese sandwich, which you've made many times in your life? I know I have. And are you doing the best you can? Have you done this before? And what's the problem? I made a grilled cheese sandwich for my daughter. I make several grilled cheese sandwiches for her, and one of them didn't go over too hot. So ever since then, I always question myself, like, is this a good one, baby? Is this good? But the reality is that this is something I've done before, I've had success in, so that self-doubt isn't really valid. That is unrealistic self-doubt for me to be having self-doubt over this. But if I was trying something new, something I've never done before, something that I just woke up in the morning and without research, without planning, without some serious thought to it, then we can understand that self-doubt. And only you can answer that question internally. Is this something that's unrealistic or realistic? There's nothing wrong with having self-evaluation, folks. There's nothing wrong with sitting back and looking at a situation and say, okay, am I really equipped for this? What does this take? So I think that's something we should keep in mind. Another thing, you need to ask yourself when you're dealing with self-doubt, consider if it's something else. Sometimes we have this attitude that it has to be perfect or I can't do it. I hear so many times that people that want to start something, want to do something, they have all the greatest intentions, but they make the comment or say something along the lines of, well, I can't do it, man. It's not right. It's not perfect. Good morning, Stephen. Good to see you, brother. I would never encourage anyone to go out half-cocked and not committed to what they want to do, but the reality is that sometimes you got to focus on the message of what you're doing and not the mistakes. Sometimes you can do something with every intent for it to be perfect or be its best version of itself, but when it's done, you realize that it wasn't perfect, despite all your efforts to make it that. So if you sit back and continue to self-doubt yourself because you can't put forward something that is perfect, and what is really perfect, folks? Let's think about that. Brother Marshall, good morning. Kevin Marshall in the building, representing for Saginaw. and the Bearcat family. Good to see you, brother. But we have this self-doubt because we say this thing that I did is not perfect. It wasn't a perfect outcome. And let's be honest, what is really the word perfect? When you think about perfect, you think about God and holiness and spirituality and a perfect being, something being completely whole. And despite our biggest efforts, we can slip up on the smallest things. So you got to keep that in mind. I know Coach Marshall knows about that when he's coaching these young people in football and basketball, trying to get them to perfection. You work on it, but sometimes you don't have that, and you continue to move forward. So what's some other things we want to talk about with self-doubt? You know, stop seeking reassurances. That's the wrong remote. That's for the TV. Stop seeking these reassurances, I should say. You know, with people who are going to try to help you looking for this. But got my boy Neo here, right here, and I guess that goes back to what's realistic and what's unrealistic is what I wanted to say about that. You know, in this particular case, you got Neo here, and The Matrix, was a great movie if you've seen them all, but some things are real and some things were not real. And I think that's something we got to think about with these unrealistic expectations that we have sometimes. Some things are real and some things are not real, and we got to really understand what's real and what's not. And only you can know that by your experiences, what you've been doing. Okay. Stop seeking reassurances. If you look at this, you got 6 birds all singing. 5 of them are on one tune, and you got another one jamming out to their own tune. So many times, folks, and I know my viewers can understand this, we seek reassurances of other people to feel supported to move on. Now, it's great to get wise counsel. Rick Weiner was our counsel in Governor Granholm's office. We went to Rick to seek wise counsel on things that we hadn't experienced or didn't know about, and he always gave wise counsel. But the other part of that is before we all rush to seek wise counsel, it's important to know the psychology behind believing in yourself and not always seeking reassurances. Because when you tell yourself, I'm going to go with the plan that I have, you give yourself more confidence. If you constantly have to go look to others to get reassurances, then you lose that part of developing the self-confidence necessary to go on. Trust your gut. You're responsible for you. Everything shouldn't be, I need to go ask someone, what do you think? What do you feel? Brother Books, good morning, cuz. Good to see you. Happy belated birthday. What do you feel? So you want to be able to stop seeking reassurances for everybody. You get to a point in your adult life where you've gotten this far based on learning things, based on experiencing things, and you want to keep that in mind. Believe in yourself and stop seeking those reassurances from everybody going forward. You've been blessed with enough information and wisdom to be able to believe in what you want to do. You continue to support that. If I grab this remote control from my TV one more time, we will have a problem. We talk about those reassurances and also taking tiny steps. As me and my guy Forrest Boyer call it, brick by brick. When you're dealing with this self-doubt, sometimes we have self-doubt because we've kind of jumped out so far in front of ourselves. Yeah, it's one thing to be ambitious, it's one thing to have a plan, but are you doing something in a way that it can really work? Now, if you're doing something that's step by step, brick by brick, that should help alleviate that self-doubt. That should help you say, you know what, I'm not taking a whole bite of the elephant just now. I'm just going at it piece by piece. And that same motivation you have to be successful is what you're going to have to continue to go forward and keep pushing through. When you think about that, you got to have that brick by brick, piece by piece. So many times you want to jump off the porch and get it all. And I'm not mad at you. I'm not saying don't be ambitious, but how realistic is it to be able to just do something as opposed to doing it piece by piece, brick by brick, and you can manage it. And if you're worried about failing, when you put a brick up as opposed to a wall up, you can go and fix that compared to having to fix the whole wall. You got to practice some self-compassion out here too. Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves, man. Sometimes the hardest critic in our lives are our own selves. How we treat ourselves, how we respond to ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. I had that conversation with my mother a lot. Sometimes I could be my worst critic. Sometimes the things I beat myself up over are not really worth that, but it's me setting the standard for myself. But even if you do that, you got to go back and practice some self-love, some self-compassion. Pat your own self on the back. Say, Lindsay, it's okay. You're doing it. Give yourself a break. You didn't hit it out the ballpark, but you got on base. And that's sometimes what's necessary to win a game, keeping it with the sports analogy. So you got to give yourself some self-compassion, some self-love, especially if there's no one else around giving you that. You got to support yourself. You got to love yourself. And one more thing before we get out of here. You got to clarify your values, when you're dealing with self-doubt. You have to remind yourself, which direction am I headed? Thank you, Mimi, for the hand clap. which direction am I going? You know, go back to your compass. What is your true North Star? What are you out here trying to do? And I think sometimes life, I mean, my goodness, the last 4 months, guys, I've been talking to you. We've been talking about a global pandemic, and everything got shut down. Everything got turned upside down. But now as we seek some form of normalcy, what is the same thing you were working on pre-March 13th? I say pre-March 13th because that's the day I was in Indianapolis with Jack Ebling, Doug Warren. We were going down to cover the Big Ten basketball tournament, and then everything got shut down. You know, all the things that I was doing face-to-face, you know, interviews, you know, being out there in the sports scene, all that changed, and probably significantly, probably for a long time, you know. So now it's about getting back to what you were doing beforehand. Now, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our families, our priority, but what were you really about, you know? How much has things changed now with this global pandemic? Are you adjusting? Are you changing completely? But you want to get back to your values. So with that, guys, I won't keep you too long. I just thought the topic of self-doubt was very important to talk about, especially when it comes down to the fact, you know, as your mindset to stop, start, change, and possibly pivot. I like to pivot. Sometimes we don't like to pivot, Michelle, because we had this plan in our mind. But if you remember where you're trying to end up at, if you remember where the actual goal is, there are detours along the way. And that's just the reality of it. Some detours are short, some are very long, some take a lot of time, but we have to remember where we're going. I'll say this finally, and I appreciate Michelle's comment. If you're going on a trip, if there's a huge detour, do you turn around midway through the trip and say, I'm not going anymore? Or it's going to take too long? Or I don't feel like waiting? That's part of it, man. That's part of life. And if any of us are old enough to know, that's what happens. So reconfigure what your destination is, reconfigure your North Star, reconfigure your values. What are you focused on? What are you about? And that self-doubt is part of our lives. It comes up. And just because you have self-doubt doesn't mean you can't achieve something. I look at self-doubt, as I say, as self-evaluation. I talk about that in the book as being able to look at yourself and honestly ask yourself, is this what I need to be doing? Is this where I need to be going? So with that, on that Monday, guys, it's a Monday motivation. Go out here and have a great week, guys. I feel very inspired today and this week, and I hope that that can pass on to you what you're working on, what you're doing. And self-doubt is a part of the process, but doesn't mean that you can't achieve because you have a little bit of that coming up in your life. So with that, great day, great week, and great life. Lindsay Huddleston with SPS, the Monday Motivation out. See you guys soon. Thanks for your love and support.